Anyway, moving on, the next thing we want to do is make the broad cuts in our web page. So we need to get this top bar set up. We need to get our background set up, the nav, the main, and the footer. So we're just going to make really big broad cuts, and then we'll refine as we go along through just the process of iteration. So the first thing is the biggest cut is probably this blue background. So I've downloaded a color picker, which is a Chrome extension that will allow me to hover over any color, click on it, and it will give me the hex code for that color. So I'm going to copy that hex code, then come into my style and select the body element, and then tell it that the background color for the body element is going to be the color that I copied off of this site. So if I save that and refresh, now I get that blue color in the body background. So it's important to understand what that did. Basically went to this body element, selected it, added the background color in. So the next thing I need to do is build out this top bar. In our HTML, we have that here in this section. So I need a way to select the section because I have multiple sections. So I'm going to add a class here called top bar, save that, then use a class selector in CSS, type in background color. Now I need to get this gray color. They've used a gradient here, which I'm not going to worry about because I'm just making big cuts. So I will select this gray color here, copy it, put in that color, refresh it, and you can see now I have that gray background color. So I have my gray here, I've got my blue. Now I want to come and do my nav. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come find my nav here, come back to my style sheet and say nav, which will select that nav element. Then I'm going to come back to my color picker, and this may be the same color. Yeah, it looks like it's close to the same color. So I'll use this same background color attribute, save that, refresh. Now I get that section here, which is gray. So you can see, again, I'm just doing these really big cuts, nothing too special. Now my main element, my main box, that's all white. So you can see here with main is the tag, this is the section. I just want to put the background color as white. So I'll select the main element, use background color, and FFF is for white. Refresh, now I have white. So again, the gray, the blue, the gray, the white. Now we have this footer, which is this same gray. So looking back at my HTML, I have my footer here. So I will come to select that element, and I'm just copying and pasting this for time's sake. So save that, refresh, now I have gray. The gray, the blue, the gray, the white, the gray. Now that we have the basic structure of the colors and the sections, now I want to talk about an idea called containers. So if you look at the Ernie Sports Daily page, you see that the top bar goes all the way over, but the text is actually in a box right in here, and that's called a container. And if we inspect that, you'll see that this container is about 940 pixels wide. Right there, you can see. So this, highlighting it in the developer tools, you see that the top bar all the way across is wide, and then in there's another section or another div that is 940 pixels wide, which allows it to be centered on the page no matter what size the screen is. So if I have a really large screen, it will be centered on the page, or if I have a small screen, it will continue just to fill the center. So we want to create that concept of these containers, and you see that everything falls into this like invisible container in here. So to do this, I'm going to come back to my HTML, and I'm going to change a few things around a little bit. First, The container is a little bit different on the top here through these sections, and I want to keep these sections actually separate because this top bar goes all the way to the end, where this container doesn't. It's just part of the background. So I'm going to take my section here and I'm going to move it outside of the header. And then I'm going to actually change it from a section to a div, which is the same thing from a functionality perspective, but just from a typing perspective, it looks a little bit different, and I think that's more clear. So I have my top bar here, which just to show you that that doesn't do anything different, you can see it's the same. Now, inside of that, my top bar is going all the way 100% across the page. I need to create a new div inside of here, and I'll give it a class container, and then end my div tag. Save that. Again, no change there. But in here, I can come in now and I can say select the classes which are container, and for my margin setting, I want to do 0 and auto. So 0 on the top and the bottom, auto left and right. Next, I need to give the container a width. So I'm going to give it a 940 pixel width. Now when I save that and I refresh it, you can see that that starts to come over. So there's my container. Now I need to put this in a container as well. So I'm going to come back to my header section here. And I don't need any colors, because the color is the same as the background, this will be quite easy. I could just add a class container to my header, refresh it, and then that brings it over. Which again, if you inspect this element, you can see that here it's making this container 940 pixels wide, and then it's on the left and the right, it's doing an auto sizing, which puts it in the center. So if I come to my nav here and I do class container, I want the nav to do the same thing. And so you can see that centers that nav, just like that's centered. My main here, I need to do the same concept for the main. This is a container, so that's going to bring it over. So I'm just moving pretty quick, but I click save that, refresh here. So I have my nav, my main content. Now my footer, this is a little bit different. This one does go all the way over to the edge, and it has the content in the middle. So I can't do the container on the outer element, or else it will move it here. So the outer element that has the color, which is the footer, needs to go side to side, and then the inner element, I can create a new div with a class container. Save that, refresh it, and then you see it brings it in to this middle section. So that's how containers work. And you can see here again the code. We're just setting the box width to 940 pixels, and then the margin on the top and the bottom is 0, and then left and right is auto. So it's auto sizing the margin here, which puts it in the middle. So I want to take a break and talk about quality code. And when we refer to quality code, we're just talking about what we've done. Is it the best way to do it? Is it easy for other people to understand? And in the future, when we go to maintain our code and to change it, have we done it in a way that makes it easy to change and it keeps the cost down to change? So the best way to learn is just from mentors and having people review your code and give you feedback. You can also look online for best practices and how to do things. But another way is just after you get something working to go back and take a look at your code and just look at what you've done and see if there's a way that you can simplify your code quite a bit. So I'm going to go through and analyze what I just did and see if there's a better way to do it. So you'll notice that I've added a lot of container classes to all over the place to make this style be centered like we've talked about. Part of the problem with that is I'm marking up my page based on styles, and I'm saying, hey, I want to have this style here and this style here, rather than just saying, hey, this is the layout of the page, style, you do what you want with it. So to make that more specific, I'm going to come in and take container out of this class container out of the div here. You can see that resets it back, but I'm going to come to my container where I set this style, and I'm just going to say the top bar, the first div, that's what I want you to do this margin 0 auto on. Save that and refresh, and it puts it back there. So you can see I haven't marked up, I haven't had to specify a class, I just selected this class that was here. So I can do the same thing with the header, remove that class container, and as long as I add the header element to this selector, so now you can see I'm selecting everything with class container, I'm selecting the top bar, first div, and I'm selecting the header. This will actually select all divs in it, I believe. And now I'm selecting the header. That's the same. So now I'll continue to come through here, actually remove all those container classes, and then come into the style and let the style sheet dictate that. So I'll have my footer, I have my header, I have my nav, I have my main, and then I have my footer with the first div in the footer. Save that and refresh it. And now I don't have classes marking up all of my HTML here. I've just gone into the structure and actually specified it. Now it was good for me to go through that exercise because there were some of these divs that had to be in here so that we would get the container effect, but I didn't have to clutter the HTML with all those classes. Also, one thing I realized is that when I did that, I don't even need to have that container class anymore. So I'm just going to delete that right out of there. So now I just have my top bar div, header, nav, main, footer, and that's it. So just a quick example of reviewing your code, thinking about simpler ways to do it, simpler ways to do the code, and making your code clean.